All right, guys. Hi, I'm Ethan. I study biochemistry here. And my project is assessing factors for success in first-year general chemistry. I work with Dr. Benjamin Abrams on this project, and he, of course, teaches all of the labs for first-year students, and Chemistry 109, 110 in particular is our focus. So understanding a little bit about 109, 110, it's really a unique course sequence. The class size is around 150 to start, and it's tailored toward biochemistry, biomedical engineering, and pre-health students. It's fairly rigorous. There is lecture work and also lab work where the lab commitment alone can often be 7 to 10 hours a week, involving a 4-hour lab, an hour-long pre-lab lecture, and then work on top of that. The lab has a quantitative analysis component. This is why certain majors have to take a course like this. It's something that is not seen in high schools, where there's a lot of data crunching, and looking at what's meaningful in the data is really what's unique about the course. It does assume knowledge from previous chemistries. This would be an AP course in high school or a strong performance in non-AP course. Alongside, the students get support from graduate TFs and undergraduate LAs. Every single TF and every LA hosts an office hour. So office hours, there's often 15 to 20 office hours throughout the week. Students attend multiple usually. Myself, I have 3 semesters of background as a learning assistant in 109, 110. And I found it very rewarding. I often had 15 to 20 students in my office hour where I'd take it to the blackboard or do some one-on-one instruction. And part of why we're interested in these freshman courses is that retention is generally low across the board in chemistry. These are 101, 109, and 111, 111 being a little bit more advanced. And we see a big drop-off before exam 1. Students are still settling. They might not have found the course to start with, and they switch among these. The retention kind of smooths out, but I imagine it's worse than most courses. We think that this shows that just the course is rigorous, and first-year students need support to transition into a very quantitative and rigorous freshman course load. So when we endeavored to start understanding what makes for a successful student in 109, 110, some key things came out in interviews and some surveys I conducted last year. These were the strong importance of high school preparation in an AP or non-AP course. The students I interviewed cited the helpfulness of office hours, that if they had a turnaround mid-semester, it was often finding support in office hours that led to that turnaround. That being said, though, about 43% of students in this year did not attend office hours a single time. And so we designed a study to assess attendance and the impact of that attendance. We're also linking this office hour assessment with our knowledge about student backgrounds from records, and we'll be looking at their outcomes. The office hour component, attendance was taken by the graduate TFs and LAs and Dr. Abrams throughout the semester, so I knew which student attended which office hour, what day of the week, all throughout the fall semester. I also took their high school testing information, their AP tests, their SAT tests, high school GPA, and we looked at that. An attitude survey was also distributed. This kind of got into their perception about office hours, why they go, what might make them nervous to go, and so on, kind of qualitative data. So we're going to get into the results soon, and if you're not familiar, I'm using Z-scores to assess student performance. This is your standard score. If you get an exam and you're 1 standard deviation above the mean, you know you got an A. That 1, being 1 standard deviation above is just a Z-score of 1. So we're going to see a range of -2 to 2 or so for how students do. This is an example of the kind of data I was able to obtain about students. This is an example of one student and their progress through the 10 or so weeks of the course. So the red dots indicate not attending office hours that week and their ensuing grade, whereas blue dots are weeks they attended. And we see, in particular with this student, they did not begin by attending. They didn't do so well, quite poorly, around -2 standards. And then they began coming consistently every week, and their performance improved. So we think it's important to not only look at, say, how often somebody attended, but when and maybe why is something that we'd be interested in. Here's another example of a student, and you see a transition about midway through the semester. Attendance generally increased from around 30 to 50 students by looking through our data. And we think that a first exposure is important. We think that having strong office hours and bringing them in early will help with performance throughout the semester. So here is a little just result of the survey I sent out. We had on the x-axis, they estimate their attendance, while the y-axis is their actual attendance that I found. And I've just let an identity line on the graph. So any data point that falls below that identity just means the students overestimated their attendance. So most students were overly optimistic about how often they were attending. And in the box in the bottom left, you see that 62% of students are in the 0, 1, or 2 attendances. So it's a very hard course, very rigorous course, and over half of students only attended once or twice throughout the semester. And so this is kind of the important slide of we're looking at how office hours affected performance. And the real takeaway is that regular office hour attendance, anything from 6 and up, maybe half the weeks. A student who attended half of the weeks they had post-labs, they all performed above average. And they all would have received a B- to an A in the course. This, to me, says that office hours might not be necessary to strong performance, but they are sufficient. That a student who comes to office hours consistently will get the sufficient help they need to meet expectations. This chart looks at the differential grade throughout the weeks of cohorts of students who either attended or did not attend office hours. So this is just students who attended at least twice throughout the semester. And then I looked at, for each of these students, the average score of a student who attended or did not attend. So we see that the blue dots are over the red dots, and the average differential there is a 0.26 standard score. So on any given week, any given student who attended, they could expect a 0.26 improvement in their grade by attending office hours. And then there's also something happening at week 5 where perhaps the LAs were misinformed. We don't know. So here's another slide from our surveys, and when we found that students were able to perceive the benefit of office hour attendance, actually. So the x-axis here is score improvement during weeks with attendance, and that's just what we looked at, that 0.26. It's how much did this individual student, though, average score improve when they attended. And I asked them this question, if they agree or disagree, that office hours are helpful to the quality of their work. And those who strongly agreed had the best improvement, and so on. So I found it interesting just how clean their perception was. So as far as the takeaways from looking at this office hours behavior, office hour attendance is significant to performance. I would argue that it's sufficient for above average performance. And it not only might it help their grade, it certainly helps them keep in line with the course and maintain behavior and stay on top of their work. Regular attendance is also sufficient. Encouraging office hour attendance should be a key focus of STEM educators. It's sufficient. A lot of students drop out. I think it's important to provide as many office hours and as quality office hours as we can, where students can workshop their work and get help. So as far as future directions, what questions we might want to ask is, how can we increase attendance? We thought about this qualitatively throughout my study, and we saw students say like they liked an LA and they went to the LA who was in their lab for office hours help, right? So we're kind of looking at behaviors like that. What are the barriers? Some students are nervous, maybe anxious about attending office hours, appearing like they're struggling too much. We want to know if this trend continues. Certainly there's other difficult chemistry work and biology and physics work and engineering even. So we want to see if this pattern would apply to other courses and other fields. And I'd like to acknowledge people who helped me. Certainly Dr. Abrams, it's his course. He let me study it, and he was very involved in the process. He's interested in his students. The TFs and LAs did the work for me of taking attendance. I just picked it up in a mailbox. And then, of course, KHC for providing this opportunity. I should also mention that I had a component that looked at the AP exam and why the AP exam isn't very good. So if people are interested, I can talk about that a little bit in the Q&A.
Did you account for study habits and time management, which is particularly salient for first-year students?
We didn't. We think that it is very important, and it is one of the reasons students struggle in that transition year, but none of our study was able to gauge that. Though we're concerned about it, and we think that attending office hours is a study habit that is very good to grow, regardless.
In your graph, you had like weeks of attendance and then average score,
Yep.
I think. This is just like a quick question. Those error bars, what
Yes.
are they? Are they standard?
Those are just one standard deviation.
Okay.
Yeah, real simple.
And then also, did you look at it all in your survey, like engagement during office hours, and like whether students who were more engaged during office hours, maybe they're like more likely to strongly agree with this statement?
Yes, we more so just assessed perception. So there were multiple Likert questions like this. A lot of them were vague. I mean, were you nervous about attending office hours? How much do you feel office hours helped you complete your work and not do better on it? So we did ask some of those questions, but ultimately they were qualitative and mixed. Yeah.
So was this survey given at each office hours that were attended?
Oh, this survey was just end of course survey. They got some bonus points.
Did you say that the AP exam is not very good?
AP exam's not very good.
Talk more about that.
So, let's get into it. So this is a 0 means the student didn't take the test, and we have 1 through 5 on the AP exam. A 5 is good. Students who get a 5 generally perform above average. The real thing is that a 3 and a 4 is not sufficient to do well in the course. And not only is it not sufficient to do well, this is after the students retake the course. So they saw the chemistry, retook it for a semester, and many of them still fall below average. The AP claims that a 5 is equivalent to an A, 4 is equivalent to a B, or even like a B plus, and a C, a passing satisfactory C plus or B minus. And I don't think that's true. I don't think that it's, especially because the repeat factor, they're seeing it again and they're still not performing at expectations. So we don't like the AP exam, and BU no longer takes the AP exam for credit for these students.
So what one piece of advice would you give to a faculty member who sits in office hours and no student shows up week after week? How do we get them there?
I would, and I don't go to office hours. I don't go to many office hours. I did when I took this course. This course the structure of this course is different. It's a lab course. So I think the best thing faculty can do is to show how office hours isn't just a conversation with faculty, but how it can directly workshop their progress and get them on a path to doing better in the course.
Did you correlate attendance at office hours to any extent with like accessibility, like with their schedule and stuff, like if they could actually make it?
But there were 15 or 20, and some, we didn't do weekends this semester, but we did weekends in the past. So students should be able to attend an office hour, and most still didn't attend, much. Anything else? I think we got a minute or so.
Does Dr. Abrams have any intention of showing this data to the next year of incoming freshmen?
Yeah, I'm not sure. He's very excited about it. He wants to publish it and stuff. I don't know. I think it certainly fit his expectations. So it fit his expectations, and he's already been, like I said, faculty should try to show that office hours can directly help students. That is his approach, and that's what we found. So I think he'll run with it. Yes.
So I'm sorry to have missed the first part of your really interesting presentation. One of the real questions that I had in listening to it was a question of causation.
Yes.
Is the cause of better performance because the students attend office hours and what happens there? Or is it the degree of willingness and engagement and interest that is betokened by going to office hours that's a causally related element?
Certainly, that is, this is correlational. And the causation, that hypothesis that a student is better on it if they're going, and so we're not seeing causation, is valid. But I also like the hypothesis that if you wouldn't go and you compel yourself to go weekly, you're gonna be on top of it, even if you wouldn't otherwise be a student who follows the course well. Yeah.
Sorry, 2 other things briefly. I mean, one of which is that what's implicit in this notion of office hours is that it's transactional, that it's basically about specific problems as opposed to developing a relationship with a particular instructor and going on with that relationship. The other thing is that probably the most famous experiment in industrial relations, which was conducted at Western Electric in the early part of the 20th Century by Elton Mayo, tried to assess the impact of lighting on productivity. And to make a very long story short, they turn up the lights at this Western Electric plant, productivity went up. They turned down the lights, productivity went up. They turned up the lights again, productivity went up. So they were, to say the least, confused from an engineering and lighting perspective.
Yes.
And the conclusion they drew is that the reason productivity went up because what the workers realized was they were really interested in their degree of comfort and in their work. And that's why they worked harder.
Interesting.
There may be a broader lesson here.
Yes, and I think engagement is good. And to your point about developing a relationship, many of these office hours are with learning assistants with sophomores and juniors. So I think a faculty office hour is going to be different from an undergraduate or graduate student office hour, and we see that they're broader.